I'd like to take you into our very first guest and speaker. Because this is the Israel Conference, we, of course, want to bring in Israel directly, and we're fortunate to be here in the second largest city of the United States with the most important Consul General of the United States, Mr. David Siegel.
Good morning. Shalom, boker tov. I don't even know where to start, so I'll just start with my childhood. I grew up in Haifa, and in those days, in northern Israel, the only way to get American products that I wanted was to wait for the Sixth Fleet and the U.S. ships to dock in our port in Haifa, and then we'd finagle through all our connections, get on board to get Pepsi in cans and Coca-Cola in cans from the machines in the military cantina on the ship. A lot has changed since then in Israel, and it's changed very, very quickly. And I think we all know that. I'm not here to tell you anything new, except that the pace of change in the world is increasing. And if you think back to all the things that we depend on now, tablets, smartphones, and so on, in the last 5 years, there have been incredible changes. In the last 20 years, the world has completely changed technologically. The next 20 years, we probably can't even predict what we'll be facing or what we'll be benefiting from in terms of technology, so that the world today is addicted to innovation and is thirsting innovation. The innovation in California, the innovation in Israel is very, very significant. So we have two ecosystems that are doing very, very well and are very advanced. California and Israel, both arid countries, both multi-ethnic in their demography. You've heard from Sharona about the huge Jewish community here, the Israeli community here. Much of Israeli technology cross-pollinates and takes place here. The partnerships between small Israeli startups, large American multinational corporations is a well-known story. The numbers are mind-boggling. There are, by my count, 180 R&D centers in Israel today, many of which huge corporations. Microsoft was here, Dell, Micron, Apple now is opening 1 or 2 centers in Israel, depending on your count. More and more exits, flash drive memory, and so on. So the story is very, very robust. It's completely unknown, which is why Sharona and the Israel Conference, or someone called it last night the Sharona Conference, is so significant because it's a conversation that needs to take place. People don't know. It's actually a very easy sell if you have the opportunity to have this kind of conversation. It's like the undiscovered, highly profitable company that no one knows about. The innovation in Israel is not just in high tech. And Startup Nation is a wonderful book. It's been translated, I think, into 16 languages, including Japanese, Korean, Chinese. It's now being translated into Arabic. But that's only one chapter in the Israeli story. The high-tech story of innovation is the first chapter. But we have other stories of innovation. I was in a closed forum a few weeks ago in LA with some very significant executives, and one person turned to me and said, "Haiti? I didn't know that Israel was in Haiti." Well, Israel was the first in Haiti, as some of you may know, on the ground, providing the infrastructure not just for the Asians, but also for the Red Cross and for other American NGOs that came to work on the ground to save lives. So in terms of humanitarian innovation, organizations like Israel Aid, Israel Flying Aid, these are NGOs that specialize in breaking through closed societies to save lives on the ground. Israel's doing this around the world. It's a global story. People don't know about that either, including in this town. Social community innovation, like a school that won the Oscar 2 years ago for the short documentary, the Bialik Rogozin School in Tel Aviv, a school with immigrant children from 48 countries, including terrible backgrounds from Darfur, from South Africa, stories of persecution, are growing up in Tel Aviv. It was a failed school. It's now a model of success. Does America need models of success for after-school programs? Yes, it does. So in terms of social innovation, Israel's doing a lot. From the north to the south, the stories are incredible, and the opportunities of connecting are incredible. Academia. We have some representatives in this room, and I'm very excited about this because we've been doing a lot of work on this year. What does Israel mean for U.S. college campuses? Well, if you ask Alfred Mann, he'll tell you that some of his most innovative centers are in Israel. And if you ask Stanford, which lost the bid to setting up the College of the Future, the technological center in New York City, to the Technion in Cornell, because California was not engaged in study abroad in Israel, but Cornell, the president of Cornell, was fortunate enough to meet with the president of the Technion, and together they decided to bid, won the contract, the international contract, to set up the college, the center in New York City, which, according to Mayor Bloomberg, is a game changer for the state. They're expecting $23 billion to come out of this project, 60,000 jobs, and at least 600 startup spin-off companies that will come out of this Technion-Cornell partnership. We have representatives from UCI Irvine here. There's been so much anxiety in the Jewish community about universities like Irvine, but what we find is that when you take a university and connect it to its partners in Israel, there's all these synergies. So the chancellor of Irvine came back, by our last count, with 7 agreements with 5 Israeli academic institutions. Medical, overall MOUs, there's going to be business connections. We know that USC went to Israel with a delegation of 100 representatives, including 7 deans. So all of this is happening. We have representatives of UCI Irvine in the room today with us that you can have a conversation with. But in all areas of our lives, innovation is taking place in Israel in partnership with America. High-tech, social, academic, community programs, and last but not least is even Hollywood. If you've heard about Homeland, which is a very successful miniseries in the United States, or series in the United States, they just came back from filming parts of season 2 in Israel. It's based on Israeli format content. There are at least 10 Israeli formats that are now being developed in Hollywood and converted into American formats. The sky is the limit. It's untapped. It's a huge potential. And this is why we're so excited that you're all here with us today to learn about this, to work together on our natural synergies to keep up the pace of innovation that is benefiting both our societies, both our economies. So with that, let's have a very stimulating day. Thank you.